Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishishta Vinyavade Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Looking around the room, I don't see anyone here that's new. Is there anyone here that's new and needs an introduction to Prahlāda Maharaj and Lord Nrsimhadeva, and nobody here in that category? Okay, just checking. Well, part 6. Before coming here, I was in a place where it was a lot warmer. I mean, there were several nights it was 78 degrees. A little different here. A little different. No snow. So we discussed Canto 7, Chapter 9, verses 1 through 23, I think it was. And it took 7 classes to do that. So this is number 8. But you all know the story of Prahlāda, and each of the there's my appreciation for how the structure of this chapter is. There's clusters of verses that express and emphasize a particular point. In other words, there's the storyline, and we know the storyline. Then there's different ways of analyzing what's in the Puranas or what's in Ramayana or what's in a scriptural text like that. There's some history. There's the story of the history. And then there's teachings of Dharma that if you're attentive, you'll understand. And then there's philosophy or theology, and then there's rasa. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, there are many other ways of assessing what makes up the Bhagavatam or a nice devotional text like the Srimad Bhagavatam. Have any of you had the opportunity so far to hear Radhika Raman's class on churning the topics of Shastra? Ooh, it's a PhD thesis. It's far more involved and deep, and you have to hear it like 6 times to really assimilate what he's saying. But that's just to keep it simple, because there are different models of looking at scripture. So he's looking at it from the vantage point of generations of acharyas and how they do what they do. It's really fascinating. Rasamrita, send me a text, and I'll send to you, and then you can forward to the others so they can have their head spin listening to it. Not head spin. It's very sweet. It's not academic. It's just detailed. Anyway, it's very nice. Churning the topics of scripture. So there's this. We all know the storyline, and so we were discussing. But and now the story is unfolding to the point where There are certain points of emphasis that are being made in clusters of verses. At least that's how I've presented it. I have been reading it. That's what it seems to be doing. So there's Lord Nrsimhadeva with his nice piercing teeth. And if you look carefully, have you, gosh. This projector's in Maya. Okay. Just looking at this nice photograph of the deity, I narrated this when we were in Alachua, in Fort Lauderdale, but I'll say it here also. Notice the eyes of Lord Nrsimhadeva, they're kind of bulging, and around the perimeter, they're kind of reddish. Yes? So the Pujari, this is Lord Nrsimhadeva's story. The Pujari thought maybe people because there are many, many, many people come to Mayapur, that they're not practicing bhaktas, they're just kind of tourists kind of people. And so when they see Lord Nrsimhadeva, they may go, ah. So he thought, maybe if I replace the eyes and put eyes that look like they're bloodshot, it might be a little more calm for people, the tourist type people that come. So he made some arrangement and he replaced the eyes of the deities, because it's not part of the deity, it's placed in a socket, and then there's eyes. So for a number of days, while worship, because the altar it's closed. There's like one pujari, it's a brahmachari, and no one's there. And on many altars, there's many devotees doing many things at the same time because there's many deities. One brahmachari. So while performing the worship of Lord Nrsimhadeva, he heard a voice. Bring back my eyes. Looked around and, because he's the only one in the room. Where's that voice? And then it happened again, and then it happened a third time. So he got scared. And he went to Jananivas and asked Jananivas, what's that, what to do? And then Jananivas asked him some questions. Did you replace his eyes? He said, yes. Why'd you do that? He explained. He said, put his eyes back. And he did, and that voice stopped. Lord Nrsimhadeva likes these eyes. He didn't like having them changed. He's, it's one. This is the rasa topic. It's a personal loving exchange between the pujari and the deity can speak to you, as he did with this just a simple brahmachari, Bengali brahmachari, worshipping Lord Nrsimhadeva. So there's personal loving exchange, as he did with Prahlāda Maharaj. Whoops, let's go back this way. So this is a series of verses 23, 24, 25. And there's a theme in each of these three verses. They're connected. Prahlāda is stating he doesn't want what many people want. And he lists some things. And I don't want this, I don't want, Natanam, Najanam, Nasundarim, same. But what does he want? He wants the service of Narada Muni. And in the commentaries by our acharyas, it's indicative, it's not explicit, it's implicit, that he, Prahlāda, is aspiring for the perfectional stage of bhakti, as the perfectional stage of bhakti is the ragatmika bhaktas. He wants to be in the footsteps of the ragatmikas. which means Raganuga Bhakti. That's one commentary by one Acharya. But he's aspiring for service. He doesn't want. So here's how it begins. My dear Lord, just 3 verses. People in general want to be elevated to the higher planetary systems for a long duration of life, opulence and enjoyment, but I have seen all these through the activities of my father. When my father was angry and he laughed sarcastically at the demigods, they were immediately vanquished simply by seeing the movements of his eyebrows. Yet my father, whatever comes into being, is destroyed. So there are things that aren't destroyed. There are things that don't come into being, things that are eternal. And that's his aspiration. His father underwent great severe austerities. We see this nice BBT painting. His body was eaten except for just the bones, just an anthill. And fire coming out of that anthill, because fire was coming from the intensity of the austerities. So Lord Brahma sprinkled some water and the anthill dissolved, and there was Hiranyakashipu inside that anthill. But he was destroyed by Lord Nrsimhadeva. Whatever is created is destroyed in course of time. And the nature of this material world, as we know very well, it's a place of duality. And then there's all kinds of interesting things said about even the happiness is, what is it? There's the expectation of happiness, the fleeting moments of happiness, and shortly thereafter it's the other. It's a place of duality. So it's not what we want it to be. We want it to be something that's happiness that doesn't end, but that's not the material world. Prahlāda Maharaj did not give any importance to anything in the material world. No one can maintain his body or material achievements forever. A Vaishnava can understand that nothing within this material world, not even that which is powerful, opulent, or influential, can endure. At any time, those are in color coding, the word time becomes very significant in this topic, this series of verses, because what's the function of time? Well, it depends if you're in the spiritual or the material world. And from the material world, because that's where we are, time brings things into being, and time destroys things. And for some time, things stay for a while, like this house, or anything, your car, your job. Wait a while, see what happens, etc., without going into it. That was just created through so the force, when Mahavishnu, at the very beginning, because creation is also cyclical, and he doesn't do the creating, he just glances over Pradhan. What's Pradhan? Pradhan is undifferentiated totality of everything, material energy. Prakriti, undifferentiated. And he just glances. And with that glance, Rama Devi within understands his purpose. He doesn't have to say, hey, Rama, did you get your cue? He just glances. That's her cue. And she entrusts 2 things to the glance. The totality of living entities, samasti, and kala. Because creation, you have to have living entities to move Prakriti. And you have to have time, material time, past, present, and future kind of time, to move Prakriti. Just like here we are. And before we were here, we were somewhere. And when we're done, we're going to go somewhere. So the living entity moves Prakriti through the course of time. So time is needed for events. And then there's spiritual time. And that spiritual time doesn't have a beginning and an end. It's time, it's eternal. Time is eternal. Very different function. So things that are created, that's what this topic is. He's detached from the temporary. At any time, such things may be vanquished. Who can vanquish them? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he vanquished the powerful father, Hiranyakashipu. Here's, on this verse, here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I do not see anyone except you who possesses power. He, to whom I surrender, will deliver me from samsara. I have seen the wealth, power, and lifespan of the devatas in heaven, who are destroyed just by the movement of my father's eyebrow, raised in mockery. But he was destroyed by you. I recognize you as the Supreme Lord because of your extraordinary power. So that's the starting verse of this section. Then the next verse, text 24. Now notice, you've probably heard this phrase because Prabhupada would repeat it. You know how he would take a phrase and say it 20 times in the course of on one lecture. So, Nijabritya Parshvam. Nijabritya Parshvam. Nija means his own. Britya means servant. Servant. Parshvam. So here's, my dear Lord, now I have complete experience concerning the world, the opulence, mystic power, longevity, and other material pleasures enjoyed by all living entities, from Lord Brahma down to the ant. As powerful time, you destroy them all. Now, previously it was he, Lord Nrsimhadeva, destroyed. Here he's indicating the agent of the Supreme Lord, or the Shakti of the Supreme Lord, Kala Shakti, destroys them all. So aside from Hiranyakashipu, this whatever there is, without exception, whatever is created is destroyed, and time is the agent, Kala Shakti. Time I am, the destroyer of all things, right? Bhagavad Gita. Time I am. So it's a Shakti of the Supreme Lord, and it's him. Time I am. Therefore, because of my experience, I do not wish to possess them. So these attractive items. My dear Lord, I request you to place me in touch with your pure devotee and let me serve him as a sincere servant. Now that's the Britya, Nija Britya Parshvam. Here's the time factor is needed because for everything in this material, it's brought into being and is also destroyed by the time energy. It's, we don't see time. We see the movements of time, tick, 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 tick. But have you seen a time anywhere? But it's operating. So those things, these three categories, bhakti, mukti, siddhi. Bhakti, mukti, and siddhi. Look at that fellow standing on his head. With his little, place you can put your donations over here because I can stand on my head for a long time. And of course, who's the fellow on the left? Shobhari Muni. And he was meditating. Well, you can't cheat. You meditate underwater. You suspend your breath. But if you cheat, you're finished. So he was meditating underwater, but he became agitated. On the left side of the painting, there's a male and female fish, and he became agitated with sex desire, seeing fish mating. and his meditation broke, and all his power also went kaput, because Siddhi is dependent upon that state of trance. Prahlāda Maharaj rejected them all. He simply wanted to engage as an apprentice under the guidance of a pure devotee. Now, the pure devotee that he was apprenticed with initially was Narada Muni. And these great personalities, I learned something. I've been practicing devotional service for a number of years, and I learned something yesterday that I didn't know. And it came with the devotees from China, because it was, anyway, the three lives of Narada Muni. The three lives of Narada Muni. So in Canto 7, same canto, Chapter 5, Narada Muni is having a discussion with Yudhisthira, and Yudhisthira wants to know, who were you before you were Narada Muni? And he knows. He doesn't have to go an astrologer or something. He knows. And not only he knows, but it says in a previous Mahakalpa, he was a Gandharva named Upabarhana. Ring any bells? You know the story? Some of you know the story. Upabarhana. And the Gandharvas, they're singers. And he was not only a good singer, but he was very beautiful. And he was proud of his beauty, and he was proud of his singing. And so the Gandharvas were invited to a big festival in the heavenly realm. Now, Gandharvas aren't exactly demigods, but they entertain, they musically perform, and there's singers and dancers, and they're, it's part of the celestial realm activities. But the particular event was a Sankirtan. What it says in the verse is Sankirtan, glorifying the Supreme Lord, not glorifying others, but because they're demigods, they're worshippers of the Supreme Lord. So he came along with his girlfriends, and he was singing songs glorifying the demigods. And the Prajapatis saw what was the scene, surrounded by girls and singing demigod songs. So they cursed him immediately. You're behaving like a Sudra. Immediately you become a Sudra. And that's what happened. He just disappeared, and he took birth as a Sudra, or as a son of a Sudrani. There's no mention of his father. He obviously had a father, but no mention. And then later, or back in the first canto Bhagavatam, because it's not chronological, but he is describing to Vyas how when he was the son of a Sudra, what that life was like, and then things happened and so forth and so on. So the lesson that I learned was, in the Bhagavatam, it says this Upabarhana situation happened in the previous Mahakalpa. So I little research so far. The research that I've come up with is from Canto 2, Chapter 10, verse number 4. There are three categories of kalpas. One category is a day of Brahma. And then the Mahakalpa is when Mahavishnu creates universes. So that's different Brahmas, because there are different universes that enter into those universes. So the memory of what Narada Muni is relating to Yudhisthira is from a previous creation. Who were you before you were Narada Muni? Upabarhana. In a different, not a different day of Brahma, a different life of Brahma, a different Brahma. Because when Brahma is over, it's over. The universe is kaput. And all the elements and all the living entities are again drawn into the body of Mahavishnu, right? Well, at least the living entities are. And then the Prakriti is then dismantled, or it goes back to its disintegrated, undifferentiated pradhan state. Just transformations of matter. Same matter. It's a different Brahma. That's just something I learned yesterday. Just sharing it with you. He's got a good memory. I mean, I don't remember lots of things. What to speak of another Brahma? And Prahlāda has full memory, although he was in the womb of his mother. That's how he learned from Narada, and he hadn't forgotten. His mother forgot, but he didn't forget. He was an exceptional personality. But how did he become that exceptional personality from the previous Brahma? What he did when he was, the lifetime, the Sudra, the son of a Shudra, and he heard from the Bhakti Vedantas and all of that happened, and he achieved spiritual perfection. And he saw the personality of Godhead, like so. Narada's a special person. So when Narada saw Kayadu pregnant, and there was Indra trying to drag her away and kill the child when the child was born, because it's Hiranyakashipu Jr., he said, no, the child in her womb is not a demon. He's a great personality. Didn't say a great devotee, but a great personality. And by hearing from Narada, became a great devotee. And he wanted that guidance. That's a spiritual aspiration. We don't, so there's a implicit is, this is a refutation of impersonalism and voidism, where impersonalism and voidism want to cease desire, to become desireless. So this isn't cease of desire. It's desire not that, but this. It's very important. I mean, it's just embedded within the story, the storyline, the history. But if you read carefully and contemplate what you're reading and what's the message that's meant for us, attachment to spirit the spirit comes through the agency of one who's living their life that way. The guidance of a pure devotee. For Prahlāda, that was Narada Muni. So here it is. Nijya Bhritya Parshvam. Association of or with your faithful servant. Nijya Bhritya Parshvam. So choose that instead of the material. Rejection of the asat is made possible by acceptance of sat. Say it negatively. Without affinity for sat, without knowing what is sat, then you can't let go of asat. You can try, but it doesn't stick. It'll come back again. To like gardening, this is just a simple example. Gardening, supposing you do gardening just by pulling weeds, but if you just clip the tops of the weeds, there's the root, and wait a while, it'll come back. And then you clip the top of the weed and leave the root in there, and it comes back. I had a nice experience this past summer, 2025. I visited California, And I didn't know where he lived, but I found out where he lived. Shyamasundar Prabhu, Prabhupada disciple, Shyamasundar Prabhu, lives in California. And he lives in a little cabin. And, he's an amazing person, like multifaceted, amazing person. Now, one of the things that I found out by paying him a visit was he knows a lot about botany. So he was giving me some lessons. One of the lessons he was giving, a botany lesson, was, you see these trees over here? They're called sequoia, sometimes giant sequoia. Many years old are they? They can tell by how many rings when they cut it. And then it goes so tall. And how does it hold that weight so tall for so many years? He says, because root structure. And he was giving me this botany class as we were going for a walk in a path. And then he said, you see that over there? What's that? He said, that's a little baby sequoia tree. And it looked like just weeds growing out of the ground. He said, but that's how they grow. They don't have seeds. It's botany class. They don't have seeds. But by the root structure somewhere over there, then something starts to grow out of the soil, and that's the beginning of a little tree. And, he poked with his stick. So that's a sequoia tree. See that one? That's the mature one. There's a baby one. So we went for a walk, and then we came back. And when we came back along the trail, I don't know who assigned us that there was a fellow came with a lawnmower, and he was trimming the side of the trail, and he trimmed the little baby sequoia tree. So I mentioned this to Shyamasundar, a few weeks ago, because we invited him to attend a gathering. And he said, "Do you remember that?" I said, the tree is back because it's coming from the root structure. So leave it a while. It's going to take a while. It'll take a while for sequoia trees to grow, hundreds of years. So how did we get on that topic? If you accept the principle of what reality is, then you can let go of the temporary or the asat. But if you don't know what the reality is, you can't let go. It's going to come back. That's like, vasana. There's tendencies. There are processes that neutralize karma, prarabdha karma, but it doesn't uproot the tendency. You understand? Anybody not know the meaning of prarabdha karma? There's different categories of karma. Prarabdha karma means that which is happening right now, or just about to happen. There's different stages of reactions of past deeds. Prarabdha karma is now. So you can neutralize those reactions, but it doesn't uproot what's in the ground, like the sequoia tree. It's going to grow again. And tendencies also continue, and that's the bondage of the cycle of samsara. Exactly what was in the verse. You can break that wheel of samsara, because samsara moves with time. It's a wheel. And, it turns and it turns. What turns the wheel? Time. Time and karma. So here's a little diagram. You like diagrams? I hope you like this one. If the mind is faithful and steady, the force of spiritual instructions, that's on the upper left corner of that seesaw, can lift the soul and maintain the soul in an elevated position. That's the power, that the Shakti that spiritual instructions have. So Prahlāda is he's speaking to Lord Nrsimhadeva, but he's also giving us spiritual instructions. So given by Guru and Acharyas, and there's that on the teeter-totter on one side, and then in the middle there's the fulcrum. Kids play on a seesaw. So that's the fulcrum in the middle, that's the mind. And then over on the right side, that's us, or at least our material circumstance. So here's the picture. Watch this one. There's a soul in a covered condition. It's just a stick figure, but that's what it means. And then the fulcrum, that's the mind. And supposing the mind becomes fixed with faith and determination, and then here comes hearing some spiritual instructions, and it has a force, and watch what happens. Woo! Consciousness gets lifted by the power of spiritual instructions, where the mind is acting that's firm, with firm faith and with determination. Isn't it nice? It utsahanishchaya dhairyat, the dhairyat part, that's the determination. It keeps you going, or it enables one to continue to maintain the practice of bhakti over a period of time, sustained practice of bhakti over a period of time, where you're focused on, where the mind is focused on attaining the objective. And how do you know what the objective is? By spiritual instructions. And then consciousness becomes elevated. And when consciousness becomes, spiritual consciousness becomes elevated, there's the qualities. There's some scholars here. What's the Bhagavatam verse that says what I just said? Yes, yasti bhaktir. Yes, yasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana. What's the rest? Sarvair ganais tatra samasute sara. Harab abhakta shukuto mahadguna. So, good qualities become the decorations of one who has Krishna consciousness. Bhagavat akinchana, the service to of Bhagavan, when there's no material affinity, but service to Bhagavan. When there's material affinity, trying to serve Bhagavan, the fire doesn't ignite so well. But when there's no material affinity, then it happens very quickly. Now, again, here's the time factor. And although, we're living our life, at some point in time, it's going to be over. In the past 3 days, I've gotten notices from someone here and someone there and someone there. Their father or a relative just departed this world. In St. Louis, there's a very nice devotee who just left his body, a doctor, and his health was deteriorating, but he departed. So they're having some, along with the rituals, they're having some procedure. So it's gonna happen to all of us. It's not maybe. Life is temporary. And what's the purpose? So the photograph is meant to show a mirage in a desert. It looks like water, but it's not water. It's a mirage. We're going to see another mirage picture shortly. So this is the dialogue. This is Vishwanath's commentary. This is Lord Nrsimhadeva saying to Prahlāda, so what do you want? He just listed a whole bunch of things he doesn't want. Since my father, possessing such power and wealth, was destroyed, I do not want objects of enjoyment. Knowledge to attain those objects, which is actually ignorance, pleasure of the senses, and even the enjoyment of Brahma, since these are all destroyed by time. Then, I know that being at the side of your servant is the best. Like, it's so simple. And then to apply that so simple, this is it's one of the necessities when you listen to this nice recording of Radhika Raman. He says it nicely multiple times, so it goes in. It's necessary the application is necessary. It's for realization, you have to, not just theory, you have to, how do I apply this? Or how do we, in our current generation, apply this ancient teaching? Is it applicable? It certainly it is, but then what's the message? How are we supposed to ingest? Here's, on this particular verse, there's Jiva Goswami making comments in Krama Sandarbha. You're going to hear this in the course of this visit, so I'll just quickly say what Krama Sandarbha is. Krama Sandarbha is similar to what Prabhupada did. It's verse by verse by verse. It's a type of commentary. So that's what Krama Sandarbha is. So he's commenting on this verse in Krama Sandarbha. In 2 verses, he expresses his desires while lamenting his suffering, covering his one request with humility. He prays for service in prema at the Lord's lotus feet, following the feet of his servants. And he makes the comment, this is Raganuga Bhakti. What's Raganuga Bhakti? There's a whole section in Bhakti Sandarbha on what Raganuga Bhakti is. What is it? It's one who is a follower of the rules and regulations, the vidhis, nishedhas, the injunctions and the prohibitions, and has become purified at a certain stage of purification. They may have some sense of a particular perfect devotee who they really admire, and then they find themselves not imitating, but trying to become the servant of that person, that, their mood and what will please them, and mold their life in such a way that that person's mood of bhakti is something that I admire so much, I want to be in service to them. Not imitate, but be in service to them. And then one becomes their servant. That's Raganuga Bhakti. And that as that matures, that bhakti becomes your bhakti of the perfected soul. So that's the implicit, what Jiva Goswami is indicating, what this one little prayer is. I don't want these other things. This is the one thing I want. Similarly, here's Sanatana Goswami's commentary on this verse, but he comments on it, in Hari Bhakti Vilas. My dear Lord, I have enough experience of worldly opulence, mystic powers, and other material pleasures that are enjoyed by all living entities, from Brahma down to the mere insect. As irresistible time, you destroy everyone and everything. Therefore, I do not want to possess these things. Instead, I request that you give me the association of your pure devotee, and let me sincerely serve him. Same message with different language, but that's what this particular section is indicating. Detachment from material aspiration. And who in the material world isn't chasing one or another combination? Everyone. Even, the spiritualists or religionists that they're chasing. Because at least in the Vedic model, Dharma, for most people, what's the purpose that they're pursuing? Artha, prosperity in this life and the next. And then an upgrade in the heavenly realm if I get really good at being a dharmic person. Dharma, artha, And what's the purpose of that artha? Sense gratification on this plane or some other plane. And then when one finds that's not, I was expecting happiness and I got unhappiness. I was expecting, something and I got something else. As Prabhupada would say, even the demigods, they're in anxiety all the time because there's the demons that want to take over and battle, and where doesn't it happen? Whatever position you have, there's the envious people that want to take it and compete with you, and so. Whew. So at a certain point, then I don't want to do this anymore. What do you want? I want liberation. I want out of here. And then there's different ideas of what liberation is. In Bhagavat Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami comments in this particular context, the great devotees of the Lord obtain transcendental benefits that cannot be destroyed by time. Then later, the devotees are beyond time and attain the purushartha of closeness to the Lord. What's this term purushartha mean? Who knows? Who can volunteer? Purushartha. And raise your hand if you know what the term means. Yes. Huh? Efforts? Well, artha means something that you want. Purushartha means those things that people want. And then what they want from a superior person. So, the Purushartha for the materialist has moved for Prahlāda into for devotees beyond time, and their Purushartha is closeness to the Lord. Then in another Sandarbha, Bhakti Sandarbha, again commenting on this verse, these words of Sri Prahlāda are exhibiting the abhiman of a sevaka. Abhiman, it's a technical term. It's a mana, abhimana. Their mind becomes absorbed in the mood of a dasya bhakta, a sevaka. That's what he wants. He doesn't want, he wants. It's desire, but it's a spiritual aspiration, abhimana, of a sevaka. Or, in another place, it's indicated a bhakti as the identity as a servant. Moving on, text 25. In this material world, every living entity desires some future happiness, which is exactly like a mirage in the desert. Where is the water in the desert? Or in other words, where is the happiness in this material world? As for this body, what is its value? It is merely a source of various diseases. The so-called philosophers, scientists, and politicians know this very well, but nonetheless they aspire for temporary happiness. Happiness is very difficult to obtain. But because they are unable to control their senses, they run after the so-called happiness of the material world and never come to the right conclusion. Now that's like bitter medicine. Why bitter medicine? Because there's an illness, there's a disease. And sometimes bitter medicine is needed for when there's a disease. So some people, there are people that don't like to hear this. Oh, come on. There's no happiness. It's all a mirage. Don't tell me I have happiness, I have this, I have that, I have the other thing. And I was thinking about this verse on I had two flights. One from Fort Lauderdale to Newark, and then from Newark to here, try to convince those people that they're not experiencing happiness. You know, what's the happiness? It's those of us that travel. There's probably some other people here that travel frequently. People just do brain-numbing stuff commonly. You know, they sit saying, I don't know what they're doing. They got their little handheld device and they're doing something. You know, just moving numbers around and moving balls around, and you know, for hours. Or watching, you know, some violent movie. Or, you know, with their kids. Or, you know, and you know, there's happiness. But is it really, is temporary happiness is not happiness. Temporary anything isn't what it really is. The real anything is eternal. One of the university programs I've been asked to give is the topic. What is happiness? It's like, who am I? Question, same. Is there such a thing? What is it? So here's a statement of what it isn't. But he's already declared what it is. He wants to be with Narada Muni. He wants to be with a person that's not showing happiness as a mirage. There's a desert, and it looks like water in the desert. But we know it's not, because deserts are places where there's no water, by definition. As one cannot stop a blazing fire by constantly pouring ghee upon it, one cannot satisfy oneself by increasing plans for sense enjoyment. Both of these illustrations. Or another one. You've seen this. This is a very nice illustration. Down below, there's the banyan tree. Economic development, religiosity, sense gratification. Impious acts go down, pious acts go up. Vedic hymns, and so forth and so on. Then on the cusp, there's liberation. But it's all going down. It's all desire, material, temporary desire. You know, Indra's way up there at the top, and there's Ganesh, and you know, different entities. Persons doing Vedic yajnas. But on the other side, that's the river Viraja, and the other side of the river Viraja is the spiritual world, the spiritual sky, and the spiritual world. And you know, it's not make believe. That's reality. And then the other is not reality. It's like this isn't a new idea, but how much of it has gone in, and it's how we live our life. The reality is reality, and the other is not reality. Shoo. Rather, we have to follow the instructions of Lord Krishna. Sarvadharmam prajaja mamekam sharanam braja. Then we shall be happy. Otherwise, in the name of happiness, we shall continue to suffer miserable conditions. A common thing that I do when I speak at universities, they ask me, what top would you like? So I know what that means. They want a menu. So I make a list of like 5, 6, the topics. And you want to know what's the most popular topic? Manjari, what's the most popular topic? Overcoming negative emotions. Guess what? The light's on. I'm experiencing unhappiness when I want happiness. And they know it because they're going through it. It's not easy going through that stage of life, the transition between dependent to independent. It's awkward. And then what's waiting for you on the other side? What's the job employment rate for college graduates these days? We just had discussion on the short ride over to the house. Who knows? Happiness? Here's Vishwanath. This is Lord Nrsimhadeva addressing. What is this? Everyone desires enjoyment and power. Prahlāda, everyone is ignorant. Object like a kingdom, give happiness by seeing them only, like a mirage. Or give happiness by hearing about them only, since they actually do not give a drop of happiness because of worry, calamities, attachment, hatred, envy, and competition. Even if there is happiness, it's the greatest suffering because of inability to enjoy it, since the body is a place of disease. Knowing the nature of this happiness, a person pacifies the fire of desire by a drop of happiness, attained with difficulty. But the fire again springs up, and he does not become detached from it. That's a very realistic portrayal of material life. That's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And here's Jiva Goswami commenting in Krama Sandarbha on this verse. Again, Prahlāda shows the misery of jivas in general to show his own miserable position. The drops of happiness, madhu lavai, increase the desire like fire increases by ghee. Abrupt halt. So just step back and little summary, and we'll see if there's discussion. This is Canto 7, Chapter 9. And that the Prahlāda Maharaj who is speaking here in Canto 7, Chapter 10, he says, you sent me here. Lord Vishnu sent me here to teach the way of pure devotional service. So he is speaking of himself in very self-deprecating ways. I'm this and I'm that and the other thing, and born of a sort of family and all those things that he says about himself. Unqualified, all these demigods with I don't have an education, and but he's teaching the way of pure devotional service. So humility is part of pure devotional service. It's a starting point. And then on top of that starting point comes qualifications. Bhakti carries with it qualifications. So he's teaching us the way of pure devotional service, and just in this section, rather than all the other sections, is looking at the reality of things. The reality of things is there's the appeal, the appearance of happiness that drives people, even they get something else. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukha yonaya evate. The verse from Bhagavad Gita. Samsparshaja bhoga. We all know what bhoga is. It's what, before you offer something to Krishna, it's bhoga. And then once you offer to Krishna, that's prasadam. But it's the love and devotion. It's not just, a ritual, but love and devotion, and that is Krishna prasadam. And the anticipation of happiness, ye he samsparsha ja, that the senses come in contact with objects of the senses with the anticipation of sukha, bhoga. Dukkha yonaya evate. That expectation of happiness of senses meeting sense objects is the yoni, or the womb, the place of birth of dukkha. Dukkha yonaya evate. And Krishna is it's not a scare tactic. It's how the material energy is designed. Anticipate, bring your senses to some sense object with the anticipation of enjoyment, you get punched in the nose. Well, let me try it again. I have to be smarter. I have to do it better. And do it again, and do it again, and a little differently, and as you... From the highest down to the lowest living entity, the same program. There is opulence in the higher echelons of this world, and what to speak of the heavenly realm. But what is that sense gratification? Is it what real happiness is? Yehi samsparsha bhoga dukkha. They have their misery also. We mentioned it already. They're persons that they're envious of the affluent individual, and they're after their affluence, or their etc. 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 And there's so many Vedic stories to illustrate, and therefore it's a principle of those that are genuinely immersed in spiritual life. Accept things. Prabhupada would speak about the uselessness of material technology, and then you turn around and say, but we use a typewriter, and we use this microphone, and we use an airplane, and we use cars, because he was saying how foolish it is. Going on, in London and in Paris and big cities, to go a mile it takes 2 hours. And he said, I've had direct experience. So what's the use? But then we use it because it's not always like that. So anyway, as devotees, we engage things in Krishna's service carefully, thoughtfully, and with that intention or purpose in mind, not for the intention and purpose that I'm going to get a buzz. If that is the expectation, then dukkha is what follows. It's just a law of nature. You can like it or not like it. That's a law of nature. So then what? Become devotees. Become like Prahlāda. Just aspire for the association of those who are elevated souls, and be nicely engaged in service to them. Nicely engaged in service to them is what we're supposed to be doing. Whatever our varna and ashram may be, to do those things that are of our nature in service to Krishna. It's easier to speak on these topics, but I think I'm going to end. Any conversation, any comments or questions? It's nice to see so many devotees. When we started, there were fewer devotees, but a lot of devotees came. Thank you all for coming. You have something?
Thank you for your wonderful insight. inspiring association.
Do we have a microphone? Look at that. Look at that.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you for your inspiring, wonderful association, Maharaj. This is a wonderful topic, and you beautifully narrated with so many examples. I have a struggle, and I wanted to ask you that.
Hmm.
When we think about, you gave a beautiful example about Asat and Sat, and you gave an example about this sequoia tree, which is just coming up. Philosophically, to a large extent, it's crystal clear that the material world has nothing to offer. But there are conditionings which are so deep rooted.
Hmm.
And when there are certain gloomy days of bhakti, where those attack, and then conceptually, even intellectually, it is clear this is not what I want. This is not which is going to give me something forward. But that conditioning is so strong, it just pulls you down and you regret later. Why did I get there?
Well, it's not just when there's frustration in bhakti, then I turn to those things. Rather, it's the whole, it's the fundamental orientation of the jiva to want enjoyment separate. Misuse of free will, fundamental. That's you're saying conditioning is so strong, and I just step back from the conditioning that's so strong, and it's the tendency to be a separate enjoyer, to be Purusha. There's Prakriti over there, and I want to be. We're not. We're the servant of Purusha. We're servant of Parama Purusha. But we want to be Purusha. We want to be the enjoyer of Prakriti. Fundamentally, that's the conditioning. Behind that conditioning of whatever my brand is or somebody else's, it's a fundamental principle. That's what's pernicious. That's what's very stubborn. I mean, I like the example of the sequoia tree because they're around for hundreds of years. But it starts with this little scrushy, looks like it's just a weed on the side of the road. Wait a few hundred years, and it's like a giant sequoia tree, and then it's going to fall over. It's gone. So whatever it is, and it keeps happening, perpetuating, self-perpetuating. What is that? And so if we're a little, we have to be monishina, a little thoughtful. So this is not specifically the conditioning, is the disposition or the orientation to strive to be the enjoyer of Prakriti. That's who I am. I'm a Prakriti enjoyer. I'm the enjoyer of Prabhupada's phrase, enjoy my senses. Samsparsha bhoga. Enjoy my senses. It's a fundamental tendency. And that's what keeps samsara moving. Desire is what moves samsara. Moves Prakriti. Moves our the wheel of time. And we're on that wheel, and just like if you like it or you don't like it, you're on the wheel. So you like bhakti, but it's not just when there's rough times in bhakti. That's going to be there. But what happens when there's rough times in bhakti? For someone that has a place of shelter, a spiritual shelter, they weather that storm, no problem. You want some examples? Look at our founder Acharya. Through health and envy of other people and this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Aging and, how to do what he did. Indomitable determination for what? The people should be happy. And they're not going to be happy in ignorance. So they need knowledge. And so creating a machine that would produce so many books and wanting us to distribute the books and read the books and live the books and speak the books, so that people can be, when it's something, a strong yes to something that's all spiritual, it takes care of the material. You turn the light on, the darkness is gone. A dimmer switch, not just off on, but, and that's where we need to go. And then be clear why, not just what or how, but why. Why is it important? Why is that what real happiness is? Like just these verses. He doesn't want those things. He wants, and like this. Everyone desires enjoyment and power. Everyone is ignorant. With conviction, not name calling, but it's a product of not knowing. That's ignorance. I don't know. That's ignorance. And with somebody that knows, they don't want the temporary. They want the sat. So it's not just the conditioning; it's the disposition to be an enjoyer. Fundamental. Enjoyer prakriti. Very determined. Despite all odds, despite all lessons, lifetime after lifetime. Scripture, bunks on the head, anything. Doesn't matter. I gotta try. Keep trying. Dog obstinacy. And sometimes, but it's still there. So is it possible to dissolve that? Yes. Someone else?
Maharaj, when people are going through, like especially teenagers or younger adults and so on, going through their transition, as you mentioned before, from dependent to independent and so on, suddenly they go through certain phases and
Speak slowly. You said like 6 words in one word space.
What I was trying to say is like when young adults, they're going through from
Anger?
Younger adults, like teenagers and college students,
Okay.
going from independent to independent stage.
Yeah, okay.
And they for them, happiness is a different platform.
Happiness is the which platform?
On a different, they have their view of their happiness. That they think about happiness means something like they're just going to the college, have some more fun movies and things like that, watching TVs
Well,
and so on.
it's not just fun in movies. Come on.
And how do we explain to them, like keep some space and time for devotional service? That's one thing. But having known the fact that even in my case, I could not come to this process of, Prabhupada teachings, knowing about Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, and Krishna consciousness, because I went through certain difficult times. That's why somehow it kind of triggered to me, I should focus on this devotional practice. And even if you're going through all the Srimad Bhagavatam, like stories like Gajendra and so on, and they thought about Lord Hari when they went through difficult times. Coming back to this scenario of the students or like the just graduating and so on, how do you explain to them, is it because they just had to wait for that situation kind of thing, or?
I want to respond in a different way. And the different way is by the power of bhakti, that which is intrinsic in every living entity, that bhakti can be brought out. Fire ignites fire. It's like, there's wood. And within the wood, there's fire, but it's stored. But you touch fire to the wood, and the fire can come out. Similarly, so it's not just how do you explain to them, because that's intellectual. Some explanation, yes, but that's not sufficient. So what's here, if one can tell, like, give information and explain things, and you'll lay it out very clearly. Is it going to stick? And if it's not going to stick, what will make it stick? It's a relationship where there's some experience of what the soul really wants. Using this word happiness again, it's in a loving exchange. Everyone wants to love and be loved. So when there's a genuine loving exchange with someone, then that's how they can move from being stuck to, at least starting to consider, because they feel it. Prabhupada gave knowledge, but he gave himself. His bhakti was so strong. And even for the thousands of devotees that never met him and became his disciple, how did it happen? Purity is the force, and through those that had been touched by Prabhupada's purity, someone got some association of those people, and they gave their life to Prabhupada, because just see how they had become transformed, and those persons became transformed to something that's very attractive. So attractiveness is more. I'm just trying to summarize. Attractiveness is more important than convincing their intelligence. Convince their intelligence, but in very simple ways. Simple and practical. But that's not going to compel someone to move. It's a loving relationship where they feel cared for. They feel, that they're receiving something of substance that's not the other kind of substance. It's not money. That's not substance either. And what money can buy is not substance. Yeah, here we go.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, 2 questions I have. One is, can you elaborate more on the purpose of spiritual time and how
Spiritual
time.
The purpose of spiritual time. This is an interesting question. What's the purpose of the spiritual world? Is there a purpose behind the spiritual world? It is. So, time in the spiritual world, purpose of spiritual time, is a medium of Krishna engaging in loving exchange with his loving devotees. It's a medium for loving exchange amongst the loving devotees. Those that are eligible to be in the spiritual realm, in spiritual time, they have left, they no longer have, or they don't have affinity for material or the temporary. They don't have affinity for it, or being the enjoyers of Prakriti. They don't have that. But they have affinity for loving exchange. So it's a medium. Spiritual time is a medium for loving exchange amongst the loving associates of Krishna. How's that?
Thank you, Maharaj. And you mentioned that, I might have misunderstood, but Prahlāda Maharaj was in Raganuga Bhakti? Or?
No, I didn't say that. Jiva Goswami made a comment. He was aspiring for Dasya Bhakti. Dasya Bhakti. servitorship. And to maintain and to learn further about that servitorship was association of one such servitor, or such servitors, plural. Now, the one that he knew was Narada. So Jiva Goswami made an inference. It's not explicit, it's inferred. He wanted the association of those that are fixed in bhakti, in the mood of service, and which is, step back, that's Raganuga Bhakti. Okay? It's not, he was a Raganuga Bhakti practitioner. That's not what I said. That's not what Jiva Goswami said.
So what is that Raganuga Bhakti that
I explained it. I'll say it again. Someone who's a follower of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, at some point in time through Vaidhi, the do's and avoids the don'ts, and does it very faithfully with a sense of purpose that Krishna should be pleased. They do that for some extended period of time. When that purification comes, there may be some affinity for serving in a particular way. And there may be a certain eternal associate of Krishna, perfect, eternal associate of Krishna. This little boy, could you get out of the way? So I can have eye contact with the, thank you. So there's the term that's used by Rupa Goswami is ragatmika, perfected souls. There's the sadhaka, there's the one who is serving the ragatmikas, and that's the Raganuga Bhakta, who is already squeaky clean from their following of the sadhana bhakti, and now they're moving internally, externally the same, but internally with affinity towards a particular type of or mood of service of a particular eternal associate of Krishna. That's what it is. And then it grows like a tree, or like any of the bhakti lata grows. It's clear?
My doubt was just the way Rupa Goswami defines Raganuga Bhakti is...
Where do you want to find out about it?
No, sorry. The way Rupa Goswami defines Raganuga Bhakti in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says Vrajavasi Janadishu, like it can only be restricted to Vrajavasis. But in this case, Prahlāda Maharaj is not looking at
Yeah, he's not. So the reference is from Jiva Goswami. Now, if you're going to put Jiva Goswami in with boxing gloves on next to Rupa Goswami, and who's going to come out of that ring as the victor? I'm just repeating what Jiva Goswami wrote, and that's what he wrote. It's not like he is a Raganuga Bhakta. I didn't say that. He wants the association of a perfected soul who is a servitor of the Supreme Lord. He wants his association to become his apprentice and serve him. So we'll leave off the Raganuga Bhakti so you're more comfortable. Okay? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, this is just wanted to rephrase what answer you gave, Maharaj. So just to check if I understood what Prabhuji has asked. A teenager, it is not possible to convince him by intelligence.
I didn't say that. It's insufficient.
Insufficient. Yes, Maharaj. Thank you. But by getting him attracted towards Krishna, he is
more prone towards bhakti. He's more
Yeah.
interested in bhakti.
Yeah.
But how can one try to give that attraction, Maharaj?
You have to be a bhakta. Then you can attract other people to bhakti. You can't give something you don't have.
In continuation, maybe
Look, how many years have you been practicing devotional service? Some years, I would guess.
Yes, Maharaj.
How many?
15 maybe. Maharaj.
15.
15.
So we hook you up to a bhakti meter, and what kind of reading do we get? And according to your capacity, of course, it's going to vary a little bit, just like your blood pressure or something like that. But according to your bhakti capacity, you can give what you have. And look what Prabhupada did at his age, and and so forth and so on. But because he was bhakti plus, and that impacted others. Certainly, his teachings were compelling, but it wasn't. That's not his teachings. His teachings on convincing a person they shouldn't jump off a cliff, and they should take Krishna Prasadam instead. It wasn't just that. It was. That's my main argument, or that my main response to him. Bhakti was the attractive. That's the main point. Yeah, keep going.
Thank you, Maharaj. You talked about medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, I am deceased, so I need medicine. So
Are you a doctor?
No, Maharaj. You are the doctor, Maharaj.
Bitter medicine sometimes, right?
Yes, Maharaj. So, regarding the medicine, Maharaj, chanting is the medicine, but say chanting with humility.
Well, the Bhagavatam is medicine too.
Bhagavatam is medicine
Yeah.
too. So, at least in this context, Maharaj, regarding chanting, chant with humility. What exactly mean by chanting with humility, Maharaj?
Oh,
Is
come
it
on.
consciousness
What exactly?
or what exactly?
I can't tell you exactly. I can tell you more or less, but I can't tell you exactly. No, you know what humility means. Trinadapi sunichena. So rather than thinking of oneself as significant, one thinks of oneself as insignificant. And when you're calling Krishna's name, thinking of yourself insignificant, it's specifically in response to the chanting of the holy name, isn't it? Shikshashtaka 3. There's a response to Shikshashtaka 2. Hajani na anuraga. I don't have any anurag for the holy name. So then there's the medicine, the humility starting. So insignificant. That's not like a negative emotion. That's reality. I'm insignificant. And how insignificant? Compare me to a blade of grass on the street. It's quite insignificant. So you want to know exactly. What exactly is it?
When there is a great person, Maharaj, obviously, since I am small, there is humility.
What? My hearing isn't so
Sorry,
good.
Maharaj. When there is a great person,
Yeah.
since I am small, there is naturally, I feel humble.
Yeah. But
But the problem is, I am unable to relate that Krishna is present. So there is no humility.
okay.
Is that correct understanding?
Well, that's your experience. That your experience is your experience. You're just sharing your experience. What can I say? Then that hearing of Hari Katha or Bhagavad Katha or Krishna Katha will help you understand how great Krishna is. What do you think? And then further purification. However, you're not yet purified, further purification. And slowly, ideally, slowly, the understanding of how great Krishna really is becomes possible. Just hearing it again, hearing Krishna Katha again and again. No or yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
To follow the process. And utsaha nishchayat daryat. Follow in that way. And slowly, you'll get there. I'm confident you'll get there.
By your blessings.
I'll be your cheerleader.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Someone else? On the ladies' side, anyone over here? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Always Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev. Thank you so much for your wonderful lecture. You mentioned a certain term, self-deprecating. Self-deprecating, when talking about Prahlāda Maharaj, you said that in his prayers, he was very self-deprecating. So I was wondering, is it possible to have humility without being harsh to oneself?
Yes, of course. But, it depends what you mean or what Krishnadas Kaviraj means by being harsh. You know the words of Krishnadas Kaviraj? Lower than a worm and stool. That's harsh, right? No, it's how he feels. Not harsh. So, that's relative. For someone who's spiritually elevated, like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, from his childhood, he was an elevated person. When he was, you know the story, when he was asked by all the Vaishnavas, please take this which you've heard for 45 years from Raghunath Das Goswami, and so the people after you, after us, can have the same wisdom. Please write it down. You're a poet. You're a kavi. You're a literary person. Please do it. No, I'm not qualified. So what did he do? He wanted everyone to the blessing, with their blessings, that it may be possible. So he did. That's how he felt. The qualification came not from him, but from the blessings of the Vaishnavas. So that's not harsh. It's with real humility. So what is it that this celebrated class that Prabhupada gave and saying, offer with priti, and then he started crying. What is it that you have that you can offer? Then he was speaking about chanting. Not Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, not like that. No, with love, priti purvakam. And then what is it that we have to offer to Krishna? Nothing. What is ours? Nothing. That but then with tears, and he couldn't continue speaking. But you please accept. So that's humility. He's not always carrying that on the outside, but he's always carrying that on the inside, and yet sometimes speaking with very fiery, but with humility. So it's not always self-deprecating. but it's a sense of insignificance. Yet, as a servant, with the order of Bhakti Siddhanta on my head, and the predecessor acharyas and all of the things that were sources of inspiration and at his fingertips at every moment, he was able to carry forward and give Krishna bhakti from that position of abject humility. For example, the arrival prayer when he arrived at the Boston Harbor, that Markini Bhagavat Dharma, beautiful. And that's his humility. What qualification? The mission impossible, but somehow you brought me here. Make me dance as you like. It's just I'm a little speck, and you do with me as you wish. It's not harsh. It's a relationship with the personality of Godhead, or Lord Chaitanya, or the devotees, or Bhakti Siddhanta, or your Guru Maharaj, or those who you look up to and have received from, and you carry that. That's humility. It doesn't have to be self-deprecating or harsh. It's a mood.
For me, like, I can't make that distinction. Like, I feel like for me, I can't make that distinction. Like, so humility is good, but being like self-degrading to yourself, it leads you down a hole where the mind is like, no matter what you do, you're not enough, so just don't try anymore. So I don't want that mentality. I want the positive.
That's not wanted either. Those who are elevated souls don't hold that about themselves. I'm worthless. I can't do anything. Jump off a cliff. What's the use? Not like that. You're a servant. Tiny. That's not self-deprecating. That's just reality. And who are we to offer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has everything and doesn't need anything? I mean, read the Bhagavatam and you'll get all these questions will be answered hundreds of times. Read very carefully. Read with your heart, not just with your head. And it's very clear. Very inspirational. It'll carry you. Okay. You have something? From online? Okay.
Question from Anusha. It's difficult to detach from these desires, and sometimes the effort seems overwhelming.
The effort seems overwhelming.
Can the mercy of pure devotees and Krishna help along with our sincere efforts, or is it only relying on effort?
No. But Prabhupada would say, with one kick of my boot. He didn't have boots, but one kick of my boot, it's gone. It's not alone. It's with the mercy of exalted personalities, and we're not alone. The sense of alone, I'm helpless, I'm worthless, the self-deprecation. It's like that's another Maya. Okay, we're done. So we'll see you again, not tomorrow, because I've got other stuff to do tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki?